Daniel, don't disappear. Where am I to go? You don't disappear. But we had an agreement. Every year on May 1st, we come here and meet at the monument at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. For 10 years, Daniel and Ethan were best friends. For 10 years, they considered themselves brothers. Even when Ethan's parents died and he was placed in an orphanage, they never stopped being friends. Ethan didn't grow up in an orphanage in the full sense of the word. He was taken in by his aunt, who immediately sent him to a 5-day placement in a facility for troubled teens. Daniel thought Ethan had never been complicated, but Ethan himself was even glad not to have to spend much time with the woman he hated. The boys had been going to boxing since the 5th grade, both fit and handsome. Except that while Ethan dreamt of making money in the ring, Daniel dreamt of becoming a doctor one day. But that was for later, because right now, he needed to help his mother. Returning from a long trip, he suddenly realized that the 1st of May was a week ago. He decided to go to Uncle Ethan's in case he was there, or at least his aunt knew where he was. He was greeted unkindly. I don't know where Ethan is, and I don't want to know. Probably locked up by now. Where else could he be? What do you mean he's in jail? Is he in jail? Go. For God's sake. I don't know anything, and I don't want to know. Daniel went to the orphanage and asked around, but no one really knew anything. Somebody told him Ethan had gone to the capital for the big bucks. They found out he could make money in the basements, taking part in illegal fights. Then he got beaten up, maybe just in a fight. Daniel didn't go to the capital. Can't find him there. Mom was getting sick more and more. Daniel got a job, but he knew it wasn't the same. He had to make some real money somewhere, so he could cure his mom all the way. But where? He didn't want to get involved in any scams. He searched, and one day he accidentally met a guy who had just come back from military service. They got to chat, and when Daniel found out how much he got there, he was blown away. Listen, how do you guys get in? The guy told Daniel how to get in. He began to collect the necessary documents to pass the commission. But he had to tell his mother everything. He knew in advance how she would feel about all this, and he was not mistaken. When he found out about the army, his pacifist mother cried. Daniel, how could you do this? Why? Because they might send you to the hot spots. Mother, well, what hot spots? I've been offered a medical unit and a course in nursing. Do you want me to go there? You know I've always wanted to be a doctor. Daniel, can't you cancel it altogether? No, Mama. I want to get on my feet so you can run like a girl. How much Mrs. Robin Douglas tried to persuade him, how many tears she shed, but Daniel made up his mind. He thought he was doing the right thing. Daniel had already served for a year. It wasn't long before he stopped being a regular corpsman and became a full-time medic, but he had already made a name for himself. Of course, his mother knew nothing about the fact that he immediately volunteered to go to a hotspot. Thanks to his physical training, he did a lot of good there. And for that, he was let go on vacation. And not just any vacation, but with a nice cash bonus. He got off that train and started walking toward home. He had to walk for at least half an hour, but he missed his city so much that he was willing to walk a whole hour. When he reached the station square, he immediately heard a noise. There was a car parked nearby, and 2 guys, apparently from there, were hitting on a young girl. She tried to get around them, tried to just walk away, but one of the guys was standing in front and the other was cutting off escape routes. One of the assailants was sipping beer and the other was popping peanuts in his mouth. Of course, Daniel would never have been able to get past something like this before, much less now. He headed toward the company. Is everything okay with you? She turned to him and glistened with eyes full of tears. No, please tell them to leave me alone. Daniel turned to the guy who was sipping his beer. It's not nice to scare girls, young men. The one with the peanuts laughed. Hey, you hear that? Get out of here, fast. Daniel took the girl by the hand. Come on, I'll show you out. But no sooner had they taken one step than the guy with the beer blocked their way. Daniel could hear a second man approaching from behind. He took a step to the side, removed his backpack, guided the girl to the bag, and smiled. Wait, please, for 5 minutes. He turned just as one of the guys swung a beer bottle, intent on hitting him. It only took him a minute or less, and after a minute or so, he turned to the girl. We can go. But the girl was pointing somewhere behind him. Daniel looked and realized that one of the guys was panting, his face turning purple. It was strange that it was with him. But when Daniel saw the bag of peanuts, he knew. He pulled the boy to his feet, wrapped his arms around him from behind, and yanked him sharply upward. The peanut popped out with a sort of clucking sound, and the boy swallowed air with a whistling sound. Daniel let him go, and even wiped his hands. So unpleasant was he. The guy, still gasping for air, muttered, "You're screwed. You don't know who my father is." The girl's name was Olivia, and she was visiting her parents for vacation. It turned out that she lived in the house next door. Strange how I could not notice such a beautiful girl before. Olivia laughed. "And I remember you. You seemed so grown up to me. The girls and I used to talk about you a lot. You had a friend, I think." Daniel smiled sadly. "I did, but he's gone now. I don't even know where to find him now." Here we are. Daniel looked at the house. "And I live on the next one." "I know, on the second floor." "That's right." "Olivia, let's go out tomorrow. To a cafe or to the park?" "Okay, what time?" 4 o'clock. "No, let's go at 3. Olivia laughed. They said goodnight. The girl disappeared behind the door of the entrance, and Daniel stood for a while thinking that he was very lucky today. He liked Olivia a lot. His mother cried, hugged him, and cried again. Daniel went into his backpack after he had eaten his fill. "Here, Mom, you can start the treatment." He held out the bag to her. Mrs. Robin Douglas looked at it. "Oh my goodness, that's a lot of money." "Mom, don't think about it. I'll make more. I'm going to get some sleep now. I'm getting awful sleep deprivation." "Of course, son, of course. Go to bed." Daniel was awakened by loud noises, and then a kick to the shoulder. The kick was very rough, and Daniel, purely out of inertia, intercepted the hand of the one who had kicked him and pushed the man to the floor and jumped on top of him. Immediately, a hail of blows from truncheons fell on him, and then the last thing he heard was his mother screaming. Daniel was explaining that he was charged with assault and battery on 2 people. "You're screwed, kid. Got you in a way that no one can do anything about. He's the son of a very rich man. Everyone knows him around here. Why did you go after him?" "First of all, I didn't beat them up. I only hit them once because they were the first to come on. And secondly, they were molesting a girl. And thirdly, I saved that scumbag from death because he choked on his nut." "Let's put it that way. Yes, I did. A young man almost died." Now, Daniel realized that here, this was not in the army. No justice could be served. He knew his mother had given away all the money he had brought to the lawyer, knew that Olivia was by his mother's side, but that was it. Finally, the day of the trial came. It was just as Daniel had anticipated. His lawyer was flip-flopping, not saying much and hiding his eyes. But the 2 boys, with their father sitting next to them, behaved like monkeys. During the break, the one who was choking went up to the bars. "What's up? You've had enough, you half-assed karate kid. Now you're going to go to jail, you bastard. You think you can buy anything in the world?" The big man laughed. "Haven't you figured that out yet?" Daniel leaned against the bars. "Do you know what you can't buy?" The boy looked at him, frightened. "What?" "You can't buy fearlessness. I'll be behind bars, and you'll be here. And you know which one of us is going to be the worse off?" The young man looked at Daniel. "Who?" "You. Because you'll live and think that the moment will come when I get out, and you'll answer to me for every tear my mother sheds." The boy recoiled and screamed. "He's threatening me." Daniel stood quietly. He noticed how much weight his mother had lost since he hadn't seen her. Then he looked at Olivia, who kept sniffling her nose. Finally, the sentence was announced. 4 years in the penal colony. Daniel saw his mother go down, found the boy with his eyes. He cringed under his gaze and poked his father in the side. And Daniel couldn't think of anything but his mother. How would she be now? No money and no help at all. What would become of her now? At least Olivia. What about Olivia? She's a stranger, and she's only here for the vacations. "Face the wall. Hands." Daniel turned and lifted his handcuffed hands slightly. "What's the matter? You get it? You were paid a lot of money to the warden, and we got some too, so they're going to press you to the limits. You'll be quiet in a day. I'll take you to the cell where they'll twist your head off the first night. They don't like greyhounds here. They don't like no greyhounds." Daniel said nothing. They would? Yes, let them do it. Only he would take a couple of those with him. The deadbolt clanked, and he was pushed into a large cell. The door closed behind him. Immediately, there was a man in tattoos in front of him. And who's the handsome one here? He tried to stroke Daniel on the cheek, but in a second, he was on the floor. Immediately, the prisoners jumped up from their bunks. They went around Daniel. The man counted 11 people, sighed. But no, I will not give up so easily. Quiet! The crowd parted, and a tall, very pumped man stepped into the circle. He looked intently at Daniel, and Daniel at him. Ethan? The man stopped. Then he exhaled. Daniel, brother! The head of the guard was finishing another can of beer. So, time to go get it. Must have made a hell of a cutlet out of that guy. I don't even want to think about it. Yeah, bad luck for the guy. But that's none of our business. If you want to live, follow orders. This man, they say, broke the cops too, so there's nothing to feel sorry for. They went to the cell. The chief of the guard was the last to enter. His attendants stood stock still. The prisoners were having a good time. The inmates had, of course, hidden the alcohol, and the table was full of snacks. Ethan stood up and made his way to the warden. Hear that, warden? Here's a brother you hooked up with me. Thank you, man. You know, I'll make it worth your while. You're supposed to beat him up. Warden, what do you mean beat him up? I'm telling you, my brother, no one's going to hurt him in the joint. But I got a favor to ask of you. I need to talk to a lawyer tomorrow. You know which one. And you know my kindness, and I don't think you need a riot in the joint. The guards, led by the warden, jumped out of the cell. The warden was wiping off the sweat. Now he's in trouble. On that side was the rich kid's dad, and on this side it was much more serious. It's just a common assumption that nobody lives in the zone. There are people who, while living in prison, have more opportunities on the outside than the same rich dad. Moreover, for these people, getting nailed is like going to the wind. So we haven't heard anything, and we haven't seen anything. I guess everybody wants to live. Shit, who would have thought? The next day, Ethan got a date with a very famous lawyer. He always made his money and was respected in criminal cases. He was expensive, but he always told the truth, and if the case was lost, he'd say no. All right, I'll look into it. I'll let you know in 2 days. Okay, thank you. I'll be waiting. Well, brother, goodbye. Ethan, why goodbye? You got 2 years left here. As soon as you're free, you come straight to me. Understand? Come to me. Better yet, let me know when you get out. Come on, we'll see. Go, they're waiting for you. Mom, they say she came with some girl. Is she yours? That must be Olivia. She was being hit on by those guys back then. You get married. She must be a nice girl. Thanks, Ethan. Oh, come on. Prison is my home. You got no business being here, especially since you're not guilty of anything. Ethan, promise me you'll come and see me when you get out. I can't promise you that, but I'll try. They hugged each other. The guard coughed. Daniel walked out of the camera. Facing the wall. The sun almost knocked him off his feet. The smell of freshness, the smell of the street. It had only been summoned once by an interrogator, but the interrogation took place in the presence of a man in a very expensive suit. Today, it was reported that the court acquitted him. Daniel! Olivia rushed to him. She immediately hung around his neck, and Daniel hugged her as if he had always done so. His mother came over. My son. Mom, it's all in the past. It's okay, just don't worry. Ethan, as promised, stopped by after 2 years. He came in the evening, all dressed up with expensive presents, thought they'd talk for a night, and then he'd move on. The lone wolf has many things to do. And when they were already sitting at the table, someone in the room cried. Olivia quickly went out and brought the baby boy. He may or may not have been a year old. Here, Ethan, meet Uncle Ethan. We've been waiting for him to christen you. Ethan, you will agree to be his godfather, won't you? Ethan didn't understand why his eyes were so pinched. What was this nonsense? It was as if sand had been poured into his eyes. While he was gathering the strength to squeeze out a yes, little Ethan crawled over to his lap and said cheerfully, Yada. Yada. Ethan smiled and cradled the baby in his arms. Sure, I'll be the godfather. Anybody. Thank you, friends. The doorbell rang. Oh, it must be Barbara. Ethan, I'll introduce you to my son's grandmother. Olivia came out and Daniel smiled. Get ready. Barbara's temper is like a tank. Ethan looked up at the girl who entered, and that was that. He immediately decided that even if Barbara was married, he would take her away from her husband. When she said hello, he asked instead of greeting, Are you married? Barbara was surprised at first, then laughed. No, no one needs happiness like me. Olivia and Daniel looked at each other. That's exactly how it should be.